Happy Monday to you. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 7-game NBA slate and 7-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Joining me today, we've got Eric Lindquist and Chris Spags. We're going to get to each of you. Tell us what you did over the weekend. First of all, Eric and I met in person, in real life, for the first time over the weekend. Spags, you were invited. You didn't come, but it's fine.
You need some context behind that. There needs to be some context. You can't just say we met up and then end it there. No, we had a great time. Fiance came out.
Yes.
We got to hang out a little bit with our friend Leslie.
Yes.
Another Awesemo coworker. We're vaccinated. Got to go spend some time apart. Still socially distant. Hang out a little bit. But just fantastic. Got to go see the lovely fair over in Venice. There were some people out and about living their lives, and yeah, there's a guy who tried to start a fight with me. That would have been an interesting sidebar to the entire day, but I de-escalated it very, very well, and I'm very happy about my decision making there.
What did you do to try to get him, or to get him to fight you, other than, I guess,
I said that he looked like Flea, and he lost his mind. This guy lost his absolute mind. I was like, oh, that guy looks like Flea, and he's like, I have supersonic hearing, bro. I was like, oh man.
That's not even insulting. He's like a famous guy who's in good shape, who goes around shirtless all the time. Like, I wouldn't be offended by being compared to Flea.
He was having a tough day. He was ready to go. So,
yeah, I went to
took his cart and went to the beach.
Yeah.
I'm sad I missed you guys there. I did see Eric post one little Instagram story and was like, oh, it seems nice. I got my first vaccination on Saturday. Then yesterday, feeling emboldened by that, went out to Grand Central Market with a girlfriend and was honestly shocked by how many people are back out there, where that's like a big open air, many food restaurants / booths kind of place. And it was packed to the gills with like also one group of guys being gigantic assholes going around trying to like hugging girls while unmasked in a way where it was like super aggressive dudes who looked like Machine Gun Kelly, which if you're in LA, that is now 50% of the population in LA just looks like Machine Gun Kelly all the time. But it's nice to see the world getting back to normal, but definitely kind of jarring to just be out there. And it's like, wow, people are just straight back. Like this never happened. They're just out there doing their thing as though the world never stopped.
It's been like over a year, and I think that was like my first hug. I was like, is it okay that I hug somebody in this situation? It was so strange, but it felt so nice. It was so nice. I was going to
say, COVID or not, that's not okay to do anyway. Just
no, definitely
creepy guy going around hugging women.
Not okay.
We also had a little activity early this morning, earthquake. We're all the Southern California group here. You guys didn't wake up, you said before the show. I woke up at 4:44 on the dot. I thought someone was breaking in my house. And then I really didn't go back to sleep after that. So
yeah, it was kind of in your area specifically, looking at here we have like earthquake tracker. We have 14 Twitter accounts that we follow to get updates on earthquake stuff. I don't know if you're like me. It's just kind of like an LA thing that we always pay attention to. But I always figure if the sky's going to fall, there's not going to be a whole lot that I can do about it. But happy to sleep through this one. My fiance woke up and couldn't really get back to bed. So she's in your boat.
Yeah, and we apparently didn't get it at all in our neighborhood. So shout out to downtown LA, an earthquake proof entirely part of the country, I'm told. So that's but I wake up honestly all the time because my dogs twitch and shake in the middle of the night, and we do let the dog sleep in bed. So I honestly have mini earthquakes every night. So I might not have known. I just been like, that's one of the fucking dogs, and just kept going to sleep.
Well, earthquakes are not why you all came today. We're going to talk NBA and MLB. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. We want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, also really quickly, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. We're going to get to our bad beats. Guys, how did we fare over the weekend? Any major news?
I would say for me, I was happy. I didn't play anything yesterday because I was out doing life and then rebuilding the bonds of my relationship that are destroyed every single day by looking at basketball and baseball for 12 hours a day. But Saturday was fun. And I will say one thing here, which I love the YouTube chat. We all love the YouTube chat when we're doing these shows because we have to be with you guys all the time. It's like a work relationship at this point. But I have to say one thing that made me feel really good was Saturday did my shot thing, came back, got in time for Live Before Lock. I did that show. And one take I put on there where, Eric has done some shows with me. He knows, like, I don't love playing guys 100%, but I certainly don't hide it. And when I do, I'll tell people on shows and wear it like a badge of honor. And one of our regulars in the chat, who I admittedly have butted heads with sometimes in the past, was like, 100% Jordan McLaughlin. What an idiot play.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it? Okay. And then we'll see. And knowing the results will speak for itself. We're going to talk about Jordan McLaughlin again today, but boy, was that a fantastic 100% play. One of my proudest ones. So the profitability was fine, but really getting McLaughlin right, that brought me some joy on the normal dark clouds of my life.
Yeah. So I think my bad beat of the weekend is I had 100% Jordan McLaughlin on Friday. I pivoted on to 100% on DraftKings the game before he went off. And had I been playing on Saturday, not gallivanting, spending money in Santa Monica and Venice, I would have been jamming in 100% Jordan McLaughlin myself. I reserved like 20 lineups and I was like, I'll just hand build a couple here and there. All you have to do is use some of the Awesemo's tools. If you're trying to build a couple of high equity lineups, it doesn't take a lot of time by going into the boom bust tool, finding a couple leverage spots. But I would have had 100% Jordan McLaughlin. Didn't get any cell phone service out there. So I ended up just disintegrating $88 on FanDuel into the abyss. Such is life, but had an absolute blast. And Jordan McLaughlin, obviously bearing the lead there. Rinpack, my boy, man, that it's just crazy. The kind of run that he's been on this last year and a half, 2 years, another 100K win for him. Fun to be able to do shows with him every single night, talking DFS. I'm very, very spoiled to be in the position that I am to talk with truly one of the best players in the world every single day. It's almost like, having Alex Baker Light hanging out with you every single night, going through the entire slate. And it's just it's an honor and a privilege to be able to work with him, and congrats to my dude.
I know we don't have Ben Rossa on the show today, but Spags, how did you feel about that Zaga UCLA game? Are you happy with the outcome?
I thought we were talking about Ben's streak ending, which
it did? Oh, he missed one.
He comes strutting on here with a doctor coat. We have handsome photoshops of him. Poor Singus doesn't quite get there, but I felt good to see Gonzaga advance to the hated UCLA to be gone. The other game, Ben nailed completely as well. Houston couldn't quite defend Baylor. Now we know what the final matchup is going to be here for the national championship. So I hope Ben's happy with that. But yeah, the Dr. Ben prop of the day having its first loss to me on the day where finally, our higher ups here at Awesemo take some notice. They go like, this is a good bit to invest into the future. And Ben falling short there. It's like we can laugh because Ben can take it as well as anybody, but that's just such a classic betting thing where 11-0 streak and then he's going for 12 and puts on the lab coat and then it's mush city.
Hasn't exactly gone Vegas Dave route though. It's okay. It's okay. Kayla, do you know who Vegas Dave is?
I learned who he was over the weekend thanks to you. Yes.
You're very welcome. Yeah, what a quality individual. That was sarcasm.
I've got nothing to add.
Okay.
Let's head over to our key news of the day. John Wall and Daniel House will be out for Houston tonight in a game where the Rockets are huge home underdogs versus Phoenix. Eric, who looks better, if anyone, against a tough Suns team?
Yeah, so this is the only game. This slate is very, very interesting. It's going to be unlike anything that we have like the rest of the year. I'm excited to be on Live Before Lock because I expect there to be a plethora of news items that we have to analyze and be able to dissect with 6 games that are locking at the identical 7 p.m. Eastern time slot. And then you go to the 8 o'clock time. There's just really not a lot of interest that I'm still going to have in Houston. We'll talk about them a little bit later. I do like them from a betting angle. I think plus 14.5 is a nice number to be getting. We'll get to that later, but I think that just in this spot, Kelly Olynyk adds enough into some of the usage to take away from some of these other pieces I might want to be going to. Kevin Porter Jr. Was just awful yesterday. I believe 9 turnovers, just didn't really have it. You could maybe take some shots going back that direction. Christian Wood sticks out, I think, on FanDuel. I think he's somebody that you're going to have some interest on, and we'll talk about there as well. And then for the Live Before Lock crew. But I don't know. This Houston team and this entire game in general just kind of feels a little bit thin on this slate where we have a lot of great pieces of value, a lot of great games, two specific games that we're looking at and getting all of our value from either Toronto and now Oklahoma City has been added to the fray as well. So I like getting away from a lot of pieces of this game. It might be a set it and forget it 7 p.m. lock time for me.
Yeah, I think one thing that jumped out to me, and it was something I was debating a little on Live Before Lock on Friday with our pal Greg Ehrenberg, who's, normally he and I think, see pretty close to eye to eye on a lot of NBA things, but he was more bullish on Kevin Porter Jr. And Porter Jr. did start the day hot on Friday, but kind of petered out after that. And I think that just sort of jumps out to me with Porter Jr. is actually twofold. One, people I think are really holding some positive biases towards Kevin Porter Jr. because he was so fantastic about a month ago when he burst on the scene. Houston had nobody. Porter Jr. could do everything, and he was really great at low price points. But the thing is, now you have to grade him against guys who are 7K and above on DraftKings or 6K and above on the other slates. And I don't think he jumps out as meaningfully, where he's still been a high usage guy, still assists at a high rate, but his rates don't really go upwards when John Wall's off the floor. They don't even really go upwards when Oladipo and Gordon are off the floor. And when you combine that with what Eric was talking about, where you do have Kelly Olynyk in the mix, you do have DJ Augustine in the mix, you do have some guys now who can do enough things in multiple categories that I think Porter Jr., he might have the ceiling for a GPP, but on a pure like median projection play, I just don't see how you force him in there on a day where you have such good value, potentially even more value if some guys get ruled out. So I think in this spot, to me, play Porter Jr. some in tournaments, but if you're getting more than the field's 5% that's expected right now, I just wouldn't go there. He's not the same player as he was earlier, and I think people treating him the same way is just a bad idea, and it's been really bad on some of the chalk days recently.
Yeah, it's a pros and cons list too. I mean, the pros, obviously you're getting some leverage on him now. He's going to be much lower owned. So I do kind of like getting to a tiny bit above the field. It doesn't take much. If you go over to my good friend, the Boom Bust tool, you're getting a little bit of positive leverage on him there. So I like going that direction. But on the con side, he didn't play a single one of those games where he was busting over 40 with Christian Wood on the floor. That is a big piece to be bringing onto the floor. That takes away a lot of that upside in usage. However, it's weird to me because I think the assist rate was kind of the thing that we were really enamored with those first couple outings. And I would expect that to be positive with Christian Wood alongside him, as opposed to like John Wall, with John Wall here out, that you feel like they would be a little less correlated. So I don't know. I can see it kind of going either way. I'm probably going to still be just a tiny bit above the field because I would really hate to miss out on a spot where Kevin Porter Jr., it feels like if you went for 45, I would not be shocked.
Kristaps Porzingis, not to be confused with Kristoff Porzingis. Spags knows what I'm talking about. Eric, you had to be there.
Is he related to Kriston Porzingis?
Oh, boy.
No? Okay,
too
that was
young
bad.
With that dad joke there.
It's okay. I'm wearing the Masters polo, and now I'm officially 45 years old on the brink with 3 kids and not happy. So here we are.
This is definitely going to be a Monday show. Anyway, Porzingis and Josh Richardson are questionable after both missed last game for Dallas. Spags, if they're out, do you want a lot of Luka or any Mavs against Utah's tough defense?
I think you can make the case here to get to Maxi Kleber, assuming that he gets back in. I think that to me is the one play that you could make. And I don't hate the idea of playing a little more Luka if the field really doesn't get there in a big way. Right now, the field project for 17% ownership. Maybe that results in Luka being chalky, but it's a scary spot against Utah. Utah really has been putting teams away when they are a little bit weakened, when they are undermanned. And I think that's sort of really credits what Utah does, but it happens so often now that I would have some concern that Dallas could just find the game running away from him. But I think you have to have a little more interest in these guys. But to me, it's going to be relevant to the field where you have Kleber as a chalk play of the day. Maybe I don't get there as much, but if he ends up under 20%, I think you can get there. Same thing for Luka to me. If he ends up a chalk play of the day, which he's already trending towards on FanDuel, I have some concern that the game just could get away because Utah is a professional team who just takes care of business. And Dallas without Porzingis and without anybody else, especially Josh Richardson, I think that's a not great spot for these guys. It would give me some concern, especially if the Vegas total started to drop.
We're starting to get like in this rhythm where I kind of know what the run sheet's going to look like, and I prepare my good dog, bad dog. And somehow the first 2 things that you put up on the board are my good dog and bad dog. I love the Rockets plus 14.5. I despise betting Dallas in this spot. I think that this is just a terrible, terrible line. Utah right now, currently 31-17-1 against the spread, given they're 13-12 away. So I'm going to just be full and upright with that. But having the possibility of Kristaps being out, I think I would take this line even with Kristaps in. So why am I not just getting on top of the 4.5, which is available? If you take a look over at Odd Shopper, find the best line for that. 4.5 is just a terrible, terrible number with a fully operational, fully healthy Utah team. I don't understand it. Like maybe somebody else can inform me. Maybe this is the Luka Doncic effect where maybe he's just going to go put his foot down and yeah, he can go out and burn you. But there's like 4 guys from Utah that I would be picking before I took another player besides Luka and Kristaps on the other side. I mean, they're up and down, just a better basketball team. And I don't understand this line whatsoever. So from a DFS perspective, I think if Kristaps is in, I really like pairing him I don't necessarily ever try to like stack a game, but I think it makes sense because Utah's had so many blowouts of late. I like taking a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who's had those minutes reduced just because, he's basically been putting up near 2 fantasy points per minute if you go in his game log the last couple. Like, he's just been outrageously good. And if this game stays close, you got to think that he's going to fully get there and get on top of even a 9K price tag. Like, I really like getting to him and pairing him with like a Luka or Kristaps. So you get all of the fantasy goodness from some of those studs that I think would be the only result of a close game here.
Kyle Lowry remains out for Toronto, while Fred VanVleet had one of the worst games without Lowry due to a blowout last time out versus Golden State. VanVleet is questionable but expected to face Washington tonight in a great matchup. Eric, are you going back to Fred or any other Raptors?
Yeah, this is the game of the night in a lot of ways for me. I think Minnesota is very clear cut, and we'll talk about McLaughlin. We'll talk a little bit about Cat, all those cats coming up later. I don't know. That was stupid. I got terrible. This is terrible. Anywho, but Toronto, I absolutely love. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to just like ignore myself here. But I love getting to Fred VanVleet, especially over on FanDuel. Like 74, where was he at? 7,400. Did we get news that he's out? Because for some reason he came off of my sheet. For whatever reason. So I don't know if we got any news while we had started up here. I don't see it. It didn't come from the news god, so I'm not going to trust it by any means. But he's obviously questionable. And if he's good to go, 8,100, even on DraftKings, I love getting to a bunch of him there. He would be my highest owned shooting guard flat out should he give it a go over on FanDuel. But even some of these other pieces, like going up and down that lineup, Chris Boucher, we know the kind of ceiling that he can have. He's 5K over on FanDuel, played 25 minutes last time out. I'd be excited to get to some of them there. If you get Fred VanVleet out, we kind of know the cast of characters. OG Anunoby, 1.1 fantasy points per minute rate over the last month. Love getting to as much of him as possible. Just kind of a different dude since Norman Powell left town. Just kind of being able to slot in there and put up some usage and put up some production. Pascal Siakam, 8,700 might be jarring in some ways over on FanDuel, 8,500 over on DraftKings, but I'm happy to get over the field there. And then Malachi Flynn, I think would be your other value dude du jour that just gets plugged and played. We talked about him on the Slate Starter podcast last night. And that was just kind of like, if you get no Fred VanVleet out there, got up to 31 minutes. Fred VanVleet exited right at the beginning of the third quarter. He got all the way up to 31 minutes. Just love getting to as much of him as possible. It could be a very condensed player pool for me should we get Fred VanVleet out.
Yeah, I think if Fred VanVleet is out, I share those sentiments that Eric had there, that I think Malachi Flynn would be another one of the preeminent value plays of the day. A guy who they seem to have some desire to invest a little more time into, as we saw in that game against Washington. And on the year, 18% assist rate for him, 16% usage at his price point, and the minutes, and not having really any other point guard of note in this rotation. I think those are the things that you can look to. And I guess maybe there is a chance that DeAndre Bembry picked up more run, but I do think, to me, Flynn is the one that they seem to want to develop, that they have invested some draft capital in. And it seems to me like a spot where he would benefit a lot if VanVleet's out. But if VanVleet's in, I agree. I think VanVleet's one of the better plays on the slate today. The fact that his price is now a little bit cheaper than Pascal Siakam. I like Siakam a lot today. VanVleet, as I mentioned on that Friday show, still a 27% usage rate in court time without Lowry, a 30% assist rate. These are very good numbers against Washington. So I think playing VanVleet pretty heavy if he's in is going to be the move that you have to make today. And I wouldn't be too concerned about, I think, having Gary Trent in, having OG Anunoby be a little bit higher usage player. Those aren't great things for VanVleet, but I kind of expect it to normalize a bit here, where I just don't, Anunoby's run, I'm not buying into quite as much. And this is, one of those things that could be a blind spot for me, but I just don't know how it keeps happening. And I don't know that the rates long-term back it up in any way.
I disagree. I think this is like a great spot for him. Don't you? Like, it's a different situation. You take Powell and Lowry off the floor and like, you're going to see increased usage going to every single piece. It's not going to go to Stanley Johnson. Malachi Flynn has been good, but he's been limited in the amount of numbers. Like, you're playing him because he's 3,500 on both sites. Like, who else would be? Aaron Baines isn't going to eat up any usage starting. I don't know. It just feels like there's like 3 guys that it could be in this situation. And OG's still not over 7K. Like, he's still
he is doable on DK now.
Yeah, what is he on DK?
7,200. Yeah.
Okay, well, that'll make you think a little bit, but
yeah,
7K over on FanDuel, I like it.
I think you're paying a tax on Anunoby on a hot run that I just don't know is going to be there for him long term. And I think if Boucher starts again here, which you would think, I guess Alex Len is more of a traditional center, but they play fast enough that it does seem like a spot where Boucher would start over Aaron Baines. But If Boucher is starting, I just think that decreases Anunoby even more. I just, I get it. And I know that I could be wrong on Anunoby. I just have to kind of trust what I'm seeing numbers wise. And I have him projected for 27 fantasy points today, and maybe I could have goosed the rates around a bit more, but that to me doesn't make him a qualifiable play at 7,200 on DK. And if I miss out on another good OG day, maybe I'll try to look at it more closely. But the rates for him, there's just no jump upwards that I saw in court time without Lowry, without Powell. That means he should be doing what he's doing. So I kind of have to trust that process for the most part. And I think same thing for Gary Trent too. Like he's been kind of the same player. He's just running incredibly hot, as he did at times when he was on Portland too. I just don't know that I'd want to play or pay 6,600 for Gary Trent. I think the way you can pay these guys or pay for these guys if you don't play Van Vleet, I think that's sort of the one way it makes more sense.
Or if he's out. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if he's out. Yeah. Then I think these guys gain an appeal because Malachi Flynn's not going to come in and be a 30% use rate guy like Van Vleet should be. So I think that sort of makes them more appealing. But for me right now, I would avoid Anunoby and I'd avoid Gary Trent just because I don't see it in the longer term sample. It could be just these are the guys they are now in Toronto. But I just think for me, I don't want to buy in at all time highs price wise for these guys.
All right. Really quick, John in the chat asked if we're going early today. This is the new time for the show. With that said, we are going at 4 and 4:30 later on in the week. It will switch up a bit. Just make sure you keep it on at Awesemo_com social. We'll always let you know. Thank you, John, for tuning in. And we just want to keep you all on your toes. See who the real fans are,
That's why you got to subscribe. Otherwise you'll never know when this show is. It's a moving target. It's a mystery moving feast every single day.
Like and subscribe so you will always know when the tip-off is happening. In that same game, Rui Hachimura is out while Bradley Beal is questionable for Washington once again. Spags, do you think Beal makes it back in, and how the Wizards look if he's in or out?
It's kind of baffling to me that Beal's been out this long with a hip contusion. It doesn't seem like the most logical thing. And Washington, even though Russ looked so good in that first game that we talked about, putting up the video game numbers and all that, like he has been okay, but hasn't been quite as good with Beal being out in this run. I do think if Beal makes it back in, honestly, I don't know that I love anybody from Washington today. Russell Westbrook is so overpriced and honestly hasn't been paying off his salary even with Beal out. Maybe Beal being back in takes enough defensive attention off him that he can start to get back to what he's been doing, but I don't think he's playable. If Beal ends up out though, I think you have to play Russ again at pretty high volume in the hopes that he can have the ceiling day. I think that right now, Davis Bertans and Chandler Hutchinson look okay because of Rui being out, but I really think with Westbrook and Beal, I might not get any of these guys today unless Beal ends up out because I just don't trust it with what we've seen so far. And, Beal's price too, he's not getting any cheaper from being out for this time period. He's still at a pretty premium price. So I think just taking the value place here would be the move, assuming that you do see both Westbrook and Beal playing.
Yeah, to quote Rimpack from last night, he talked a lot about how every slate's different. And that's what's so fun about playing NBA DFS. I just think it's very thin to be looking at some of these other pieces with Bradley Beal in on a slate where you have distinguished value in McLaughlin, in the possibility of Malachi Flynn, and having so many mid-range options. It's just asking for like a 1% outlier outcome. You're asking for like a full 3 standard deviations past the mean. Like you're asking for a ton to happen and break your way in order to do it. And sure, if ownership isn't there whatsoever, go ahead and have at like somebody who's 1-2%. I think Denny Avdia is probably somebody I'm going to get to regardless over on FanDuel at 4,300. Sees a little bit of a minutes bump with Rui Hachimura. You're replacing 38 minutes in essence by him being out, but they can scatter it around to enough other guys. Denny's really about the only guy. I think some people might play Chandler Hutchinson, but I really think that is thin compared to some of the other value that we have. But I think Denny Avdia, 4,300 FanDuel, 4,800 DK. There's a little bit of positive leverage, but he's under 1% owned there. If that were to hold true, whatever. But I think it's very difficult to imagine a world where he can get on top of that. But at a weaker small forward position on FanDuel, like getting to a little bit of him there. But that is about it outside of Russ Westbrook.
James Harden is expected back for Brooklyn, while Blake Griffin, Landry Shamet, and Tyler Johnson will be out alongside Blake Griffin. Eric, does anyone stand out in this situation for the Nets against the Knicks?
I just had like, what is it? Rocky Horror Picture Show. Damn it, Shamet, I love you. Oh anyone? God, I'm awful. I think I'm funny sometimes.
Try your best. That's why we like
I know. I'm endearing somewhat. But Bruce Brown is fine to take some shots on if you want to go that direction. But yeah, otherwise, it's just James Harden. It's the 2 studs up top. I thought we were going to possibly get LaMarcus Aldridge out too. That would have brought Claxton into a little bit more of an interesting situation. Jeff Green's kind of like fallen down, probably one of the worst projections on a player you could ever ask for at 5,200 over on DraftKings. Claxton would have been interesting had you got Aldridge out. But really, for me, this team is pretty clear cut. It's James Harden taking some shots on Kyrie Irving if you want, who we know is going to be overpriced at 10K, but has a massive ceiling, and you're paying for the ceiling. You're not paying for whatever his median projection is going to be. So if you want to take some shots on them, fine. But even on this slate, I'm not getting to nearly as much James Harden as I normally do. 11.5 on FanDuel is a big number to be paying. Getting up to the full allotment of 10-9. Like, I like Russ in the Toronto game a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more viable. I really like De'Aaron Fox. He's probably my favorite tournament point guard of the entire day on both sites. But yeah, I find it strange that I'm not getting to nearly as much of him, but I think it makes sense on this slate.
Yeah, I think to me, the only guy who I really like for Brooklyn, or not even really like, but that I like at all for Brooklyn, would be LaMarcus Aldridge today, just because his price on DK, I think, offers him a bit of upside. Awesemo has him in for 31 minutes, and it did seem like he was mostly rejuvenated, still absolutely deathly slow out there. Didn't seem like he was doing a whole lot, kind of zombie shuffling his way down the court. But playing against the Knicks, another slow team who is defensively sound, but mostly defensively sound because they do play so slow. And this could be an Aldridge spot that works out. But yeah, for Harden, to me, I just don't know that I see a ton of upside there. I think, the ceiling is there for him, I think, for tournaments, but if his rates come down just a little because of having Aldridge out there, who is a guy who does put up shots, which I think is not the case for anybody else in the Brooklyn rotation, that to me just could cut enough of an upside away. Maybe he makes it up with assists because he's going to have to basically set up the statue that is LaMarcus Aldridge with easy assists. But for the most part, to me, I think this is a case where they are getting another guy in there who takes up a material amount of value away. And I think that's not the best for the Nets, even though they do have some other guys out. Having a guy like Aldridge who legitimately thinks he's in the big three, I think could be something that does not have the best overall effect on James Harden or Kyrie, who's way too expensive now. He's priced as though Harden was going to be out again.
Fake it till you make it, LMA.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it.
Malik Beasley, Ricky Rubio, and Jalen Noel are doubtful to play tonight for Minnesota, resulting in an unexpected, highly owned Jordan McLaughlin after he was a top value play over the weekend. Spags, is McLaughlin a priority play again?
I think he's going to be a priority play for me forever based on what I talked about over the weekend, but I like him again here. You're playing Sacramento, which is a good spot. And really the main thing that jumped out to me going through the popcorn machine, court time and all that, which is a helpful part of the process here that I know Adam mentions a lot in the deeper dive, but if you're not familiar, check out the site Popcorn Machine, go through the various court times for all these guys and see it. And McLaughlin played over 40 minutes there, and there really wasn't another ball handler they went to in any sort of meaningful time period. Noel being out certainly makes that so you really can't get away from Jordan McLaughlin in terms of the rotations. That said, he has been a lower usage guy, so maybe you can nickel and dime him a little. Maybe he does end up closer to a 25 fantasy point day than a 35 one, but I still think that's a shot you have to make. A guy who's in position to play upwards of 40 minutes, who even with a projection of mid 30s minutes from Awesemo looks like a very solid value, looks like the best value on the slate. I don't see how you wouldn't play Jordan McLaughlin in the best matchup in the league. And if he has a bad day, like, it sucks, but that's DFS. If he has the day that he should have based upon the longer term sample size, what we saw over the weekend, what we've seen every time he played off the bench, like, this is a great spot for him to have. I mean, honestly, he could get 40 fantasy points here and it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, how often do you get a guy that is this positively leveraged sitting at 15.4 positive leverage score over on the Boom Bust tool for a popular play? A guy who's already, like, perhaps, I believe, the most popular play, 37.8% on DraftKings, the highest owned player on the slate. Like, that never, ever happens, but everything points his direction. 38 minutes. You just do the math on that at 4,300, a guy who produces at a 0.85 DraftKings points per minute rate. But now you're also taking Rubio away, Noel away. There's secured minutes. You will never have this secure of minutes for a guy who's like a third string backup point guard, or I guess the de facto point guard backup of late here. We'll kind of see how it works with D'Angelo Russell getting back in the mix here too. But today, for DFS purposes, there's just no way that I'm not going to be near lock button numbers. I don't want to say 100% because that's always subject to change as you're getting up to lock, depending on what else shows up for value. We might get some extreme 3K value. We talked about Malachi Flynn. You also have the upsides that exist at the point guard position at both Luka, Russell Westbrook, De'Aaron Fox. So many guys that make it difficult to just say, I want 100% of him. But from a pure projection basis, I mean, it's just ridiculous how good he looks. I'm going to find it difficult to not be way, way, way over top of an already large ownership percentage.
Jarrett Allen and Larry Nance remain out for the Cavs in a road game at San Antonio. Dean Wade chalk hurt a lot of people over the weekend. Eric, will you go back to him or any other Cavs today?
This is the hardest thing for me on this slate, is to figure out what to do with Kevin Love. 4,600 on FanDuel is just a glaring number to me. And we've seen the minutes trend up of late, 20, 23, what if you give him 26 minutes today, if you were to like plug him in for that number, I get him in near 100% of my lineups. I don't like that. I feel very, very uncomfortable because, again, we're trying to target ceilings, but there's going to be a situation where Kevin Love plays 26 minutes, 28 minutes, and you're going to want him. You're going to want him all in. And I know that day is coming as he's like building his way up. Cleveland really has no thing. No, they're not playing for anything. They're just basically trying to get him conditioned, trying to get him some confidence possibly. I mean, they can't really move him with that contract. It's just a situation where they're in it for the long haul with him at the moment. And, have him go out and play whatever minutes he's happy with, whatever he can possibly do in this situation. But 26 minutes of him at some of his rates, I don't know. What are you going to do with him, specifically FanDuel? DraftKings there's still a positive leverage score on the boom bust tool, 5,700 for him there. I like getting to him a tiny bit there in large field GPPs. I don't mind getting some shots there, but 4,600 on FanDuel, what are you thinking about doing?
Yeah, I think the FanDuel price makes it really hard for me to avoid. And I think part of it too is that Awesemo has been for 28 minutes today, which seems a little aggressive, but I honestly don't mind it because I do think the idea, on FanDuel, it's going to be different because I imagine the ownership could take a big jump there. Wouldn't shock me if, especially we got word that the minutes restriction was lifted. I don't think we're going to get that, but that ownership could get very high just because of positionality and all of that. But on DraftKings too, even with a higher price point, like he's power forward and center eligible. So he has a dual position eligibility that we like to see to get guys into more lineups. And I just don't know how. Honestly, I don't know how he wouldn't have a decent day today. The question is really just, does he get to 28 minutes? If it's at 25, that day looks a little bit less appealing. But if he's in for 28 minutes, I would have him for 34.5 fantasy points, which makes him about a 6x value on DraftKings, makes him an even better value on FanDuel. To me, I think if you're going to play Love based upon how the minutes are trending, and if you're going to believe the best player in DFS and Alex and the minutes projection that he gives them, I do think that taking Kevin Love at face value at either 25 to 28 minutes, you're going to get a lot of them there. And I think the 28 minutes might be more of a ceiling outcome, but I think for me, Love is really solid where he is. The question though with Dean Wade is, I think, can he do more? And he really missed a lot of shots open that game. I think had 0 fantasy points in the first quarter because he missed 4 shots, didn't rebound, didn't block, didn't do anything. I don't expect it to be that bad for him moving forward. Like he's not a great per minute guy, hasn't been on the year, just a 0.75 fantasy point per minute player, but still a dude who's better than that. His price point is high enough where I don't think he's a core play by any stretch, but if you're getting Dean Wade, I wouldn't run away from it just because he had this one bad game. I think that Kevin Love is a much better play. And honestly, to a lesser extent, I say a Harkenstein, I think might be more appealing at a bit cheaper. But really any of the bigs here, there's so much left behind by no Allen, no McGee there anymore that I think you could play any Cavs big man and it's not a bad idea. Maybe do a max 1 out of 3.
The Thunder add Isaiah Roby and Josh Hall to their injured list that already includes Darius Baisley, SGA, Lou Dort, and Mike Muscala. Spags, does anyone from shorthanded OKC look like a must play against Detroit?
So it's a weird situation where I don't think anybody's going to look like a must play. Awesemo's projections paint Kenrich Williams as though he should be, but I think I will get at least one Thunder player in every lineup I have tonight just because they have really everybody who's left behind projects as a pretty good value. They did also sign Justin Robinson from the G League today, but I don't think he'll be available on a 10-day deal, maybe for their next game, and that could change it up a little bit. But you have 8 guys available today, one of whom is Darius Miller, who doesn't do a whole lot, and I think that bodes really well for these guys today, where it's less minutes to go around. Moses Brown is really the one that I think I might not get any of at all tonight because you have Tony Bradley in there, projected for 21 minutes from Awesemo. It's a lot of run for a guy who basically does the exact same thing with Moses Brown that they don't seem inclined to play together. But because you're adding now Roby and Justin Jackson to this list of guys that's just been out for really everybody being out for the Thunder, I think you can make a case here to play any Thunder player you want, but just get 5 to 10% of every single one of them, because there isn't a single one I think you can fully bank on. I guess maybe some you might have a better feel for than others, but to me, one of them is going to get there and have an outlier day, or at least be a very quality play that opens up everything else you need in an optimal lineup. And I think that's how I'm viewing the Thunder. Like, they're not individually a must play, but as a team, you have to play a Thunder player.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes guys are cheap enough where you want to play a bunch of them. This might be a situation where you could do something in Fantasy Cruncher to get a minimum 1, maximum 2. Because I think in a lot of ways, like, all these guys kind of look pretty similar, like Svi Mikhailuk, Ty Jerome, both very cheap on FanDuel. I don't know which one of the two I would want more of here at the moment. It's going to base a little bit on ownership, so I might side with Ty Jerome just based on what ownership has been previously. He's 300 more, but salary shouldn't be a big, huge issue with it. I start to get a little bit worried with some of these other guys. Tony Bradley, Pokashevsky, Moses Brown being the most expensive has shown a crazy ceiling, but now basically like 2/3, 1/3 swap or whatever these minutes have been here at center lately. It's just tough to really get a gauge on what to do there. So right now on this slate, it's kind of a stay away outside of Tony Bradley at 3,500 on DK. He's already being pretty popular, but I find it difficult not to at least have some there. That's just too cheap of a price. If you project him for 24 minutes, it's kind of that same situation where I just get him in a bunch of lineups. I'll probably have to find a way to mitigate a little bit of that because I think that there is some very like there's a larger range of outcomes for what those minutes could be than some of these other positions. Really, the main talking point is Kenrich Williams because I think he's going to garner a bunch of ownership as we get closer up to lock. 5,100 on DraftKings. Yeah, you can stay away from that. Over on FanDuel at a already weak small forward position, 4,700. I don't know. I really like getting to that number there. I think that we're going to see a big spike to those minutes. There's really nobody else other than Pokuševski who's really going to be able to slot in and play any three. Svi's not going to do it. Ty Jerome's not going to do it. Teo Malinen's playing point. Bradley and Moses are going to be splitting a lot of center minutes. I don't know. It just feels like a situation in which I kind of feel like he might be seeing the minutes. And I think that's reflected in Awesemo's projections, and I think accurately at that.
On the other side of that game, Mason Plumlee will be out for Detroit for rest. Eric, do you buy in on a lot of ownership projected for his backup, Isaiah Stewart?
Yeah, I love Isaiah Stewart today. 3,700 on FanDuel is just another core piece for it. I think Kevin Love, yeah, we're talking about him being a guy that I want to get over top of the field on just because if we know the kind of upside that could exist in 28 minutes there. And if he gets there, that's just a smash. Isaiah Stewart still in his own right, a pretty good fantasy point per minute producer, 0.94 on the year over on FanDuel. Like getting to that number. We can talk a lot about all of these centers that are kind of in that 4K and down range. We just talked about Tony Bradley. Naz Reid is garnering quite a bit of ownership, who I'm not as high on because I think that out of everybody, his minutes are the most questionable out of that entire crew. And then Isaiah Stewart sitting there at 4K. So many good center plays to be had over on DraftKings where you can play too. I like him a lot. 0.91 FanDuel or DraftKings points per minute on the entire year. Awesemo's got him in for 29 minutes at 4K. That's a number that makes it difficult to get away from. You are seeing some negative leverage, but who else is going to play those center minutes? He's pretty much all they got.
Yeah, and I'm with that. I think that Isaiah Stewart's a very strong play. I guess you do have Tyler Cook lurking for minutes behind him. I think he might be, if not the straight up backup, a guy who could play some 4 and then will probably play some backup center minutes, and he's minimum salary, but he's just not as good of a producer as Isaiah Stewart's been, who is, as Eric mentioned, a 0.94 fantasy point per minute guy on FanDuel, 0.91 on DraftKings. Like the numbers look good for him. Awesemo is him for 30. That gets to one risk is Isaiah Stewart, a bit of a foul happy guy who does play pretty gritty, and maybe there is some way that he and Moses Brown start tangling and he picks up those fouls early and gives you some reason for concern. But that's what happens in DFS. I feel like you can't really worry about that outcome too much, barring it, seeing it straight away on the face. And I think with Isaiah Stewart, really the opportunity, the thing you see straight away is that he's going to probably play at least 25 minutes, probably playing closer to 30 minutes. That's a big number for a guy at 4K on DraftKings. So yeah, Isaiah Stewart, to me, he and Jordan McLaughlin, I think, are the guys you build around today, and just sort out everything else, try to get some low owned guys besides them. But this is a good chalk day, I think, for these guys, barring the unforeseen.
And that will do it for our key NBA news. Also, I forgot to mention this at the top of the show. There's apparently a handyman coming in my house while we're doing the show. My roommate had to leave, so she's like, I'm just leaving the door unlocked. So if my camera shuts off and I don't come back, please call the cops.
It's because you were murdered on air, which would be great for the views, though. Honestly, Kayla, like if you want.
Yeah, honestly, I've always wanted to go viral in a way like this. So yeah, please do. I want to be on a Netflix documentary very soon.
All right, moving on to our one-on-one segment. In these battle between stars, which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? Luka Doncic was a disappointment and as a highly owned player over the weekend, thanks to a dominant win over Washington. James Harden is back for Brooklyn against the low-paced Knicks. Spags, who wins this pay-up one-on-one, Luka or Harden?
I think for Brooklyn in particular, I think there's some real issue.
Shall we wab it?
I think if we get Luka out, if we get Porzingis out, Luka ends up a play that's going to look a lot better than Harden, just in terms of value, median projection, those things that we all talk about on here. That certainly could be mitigated by Utah running away from the game. But I do think Luka, like he's the one that has a variable that we don't know yet that could make him a lot more appealing. So I would err his way. I think right now, if we're to assume Porzingis plays, that Josh Richardson plays, I think that Harden would be the one I get in slightly more lineups. But as talked about earlier, there is for me some concern that just having one more guy who actually could be very ball dominant in that lineup and thinks he should be in LaMarcus Aldridge could make things slightly worse for Harden, as could just a few minutes less coming off of the injury. I think those are things that are legitimate concerns. So I would favor Luka, especially if you get Porzingis out. But I think honestly, if you get him in lineups, it's just because there's so much value out there. Like, I'm not gonna be mad at either. Just neither's jumping out as like, cool, this is the guy you pair with the two value plays that we talked about with McLaughlin and Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah, so on DraftKings, I think it's definitely Luka because you can play him at the small forward position. And we have talked about a ton of value, and it's almost all at the point guard position right now. If you're going to get Malachi Flynn, if you're going to get Jordan McLaughlin, that's to your point guard spots. Utility, I'm going to be doing a lot of 2 center lineups. And so, yeah, why not play Luka at a small forward position in that situation? That sets up great. FanDuel, I talked a little bit about how James Harden 11-5 is tough to get to. I right now have Porzingis in, which I think keeps me off of a little bit lower than the field Luka Doncic. But if you end up getting Kristaps out, that's going to be a tough thing for me, just because I do love point guard on this slate. You have Malachi at the absolute min down there. If we get Fred VanVleet out, shooting guard, if you get Fred VanVleet in, I'm going to have so much ownership condensed around him there that it's going to be tough to get up to Harden. But I still think it's probably slightly Harden because of the shooting guard position over there on FanDuel, even at the 11-5 number. But I have a feeling I'm probably going to be a little bit below the field on both of them today, which is a strange feeling because on these massive stars and scrub slates, I try my best to just be way, way over top of the field. But I do love this Toronto side of it, getting to as much of Pascal, OG if Fred VanVleet's out, and then getting to Fred if he's in.
De'Aaron Fox has had some middling performances despite high usage recently. Tonight, he faces Karl Anthony Towns, a man who just had his best fantasy game of the year in 44 minutes versus Philly. Eric, who do you want more in this one-on-one, Fox or Cat?
So I'm going to want Cat. I'm going to want. Yeah, what's wrong with me? I don't even know. But Cat is definitely the priority for me. Part of it is that he's at the center position on FanDuel all the way up to 11K, but you have so much value at other positions that you can plug and play over there that just kind of makes it easier to get to. On Ted 6 on DraftKings, we talked a lot about how there are a number of these cheaper value plays in there at the point guard position. So De'Aaron Fox, yeah, he's probably going to get the backseat there, but I'm still going to be over top of the field on him because I think that he provides the ceiling. Like, just if we're talking from a ceiling basis, we've seen it multiple times recently. He provides the exact same ceiling as a guy like Kyrie for 800 cheaper. He provides the same amount of ceiling as some of these other guys at discounted ownership. I know that he's getting kind of like mid-teens ownership over on DraftKings right now. I want to be way over top of that still, but I'm going to be over top on Cat as well. I think it's just a product of having so much value on this slate.
Yeah, I think both guys look like strong plays today, as you might expect in a game where both teams don't play great defense. For Minnesota, 117 defense efficiency rating 111.7. For Sacramento, you have a 115.8 defense efficiency rating. That's the worst mark in the league. So you shouldn't see really any issue to not play either Fox or Towns. I think I will get some of both guys tonight, but I do think Towns to me is the play that jumps out as really a good value play relative to this still a high salary on DraftKings, but a nice spot for him. I think too, he played over 40 minutes in that last game for Minnesota too. I think they need him out there. And that was a game against Philadelphia. So, you have Embiid, you have Howard. There's a little more logic there size-wise to why you need Towns out there. But I think really more than that, I think he played the minutes just as much because they need a stabilizing force out there when you lose another scorer in Noel, you lose another ball handler in Rubio, you lose another scorer in Beasley. That's bad stuff for Minnesota where you just need Towns out there doing more as much as he can, really. And going against Sacramento, it's the best spot to have a guy who's a high usage player who contributes in a bunch of categories. So I think Towns is the better play today, but really both guys should be in the mix. And I don't hate the idea of trying to get a good amount of both guys in the same lineup in the hopes that they both rise with the tide together.
Fred VanVleet was a massive disappointment last time in a game the Raptors beat Golden State by 50. His teammate Pascal Siakam was much better in that spot, but is now even more expensive. Spags, who do you want more in this one-on-one of Raptors teammates, VanVleet or Siakam?
So I've got VanVleet straight away projected for more fantasy points, and I think that's something that may be different for some people out there. So I'm just going to say that VanVleet to me is the one that I prefer right away, just on the most surface levels. That said, I have no issue with Siakam. Siakam was a guy I was very heavy on the other night. I think he came through in a way VanVleet didn't there. But these two guys are the ones that really do, on paper, benefit the most in that court time without Kyle Lowry and without Norman Powell. The issue is really that, we don't have a big sample size for Anunoby's recent run and for also having Gary Trent Grant there. So maybe things get a little bit weirder than they do, even going back to last year for Toronto, where you are adding two pieces in there that are variables. But I still think the production at the end of the day ends up being more for Van Vleet, more for Siakam than anywhere else. So really, you can't be wrong. I think playing these guys, to me, they are the priority Raptors. I wouldn't start chasing the other guys that we talked about at some length earlier. But I think, to me, Van Vleet even still going to be the better play than Siakam, especially now that he's a couple $100 cheaper.
Yeah, and you can play him at shooting guard on DraftKings like that. Power forward obviously isn't like the greatest position in the entire universe over on FanDuel today, but still liking to Siakam there. I mean, they're both great plays, but I'm going to side just a little bit more with Van Vleet, and we've talked extensively about it, so we can just move on. You guys know what to do.
All right. As we know, the MLB is now in full swing, and we have a deal for you. Get your first 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB for only $9 when you use promo code STARTING9. That's starting with the numeral 9. This gives you access to everything we have to offer from MLB DFS, including player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, lineup builder, and our premium Slack channel. This offer is valid through April 9th, so stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus MLB today. Heading over to our newest segment we debuted last week. Eric's new to this. Biggest bat. Spags named this. I did not. And now it's time to head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Yelich plus 231, Trout plus 280, Bryant plus 295, Hira plus 300, and Alvarez plus 310. Guys, discuss.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, we all know that Kayla likes big bats and she cannot lie. That was her early 90s rap hit that we all hold in great esteem. But no, I think
True.
For me, so here's one thing that we talked about with Ben the other day, and I thought it was a really good point that I'm gonna pat myself in the back. It's a really good point that I landed on. I mean, it's the top plays where it was the 4 of the 5 guys. If you missed the show on Friday, it was all Dodgers, and they're playing at Coors. Like, obviously that makes sense. They'd have the best odds. Guys like Mookie Betts, guy like Cody Bellinger, guys who are really good power hitters playing in an advantageous situation. I think those guys stand out. You look at this group here. You have Yelich, you have Trout, you have Chris Bryant, you have Yordan Alvarez, 4 guys who are massive power guys who are well known to be there. And then you have Keston Hiura, who to me is the equivalent of Jose Abreu was on that slate. And in case you missed it, Jose Abreu hit a grand slam on that one because Vegas knows better than you or I do. They knew that Abreu is a power guy going against somebody in Andrew Heaney who gives up a lot of power. That's the case here for Keston Hiura going against Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams, going back to 2019, gives up a 261 ISO to righties. Keston Hiura, a guy who's got a 272 ISO of his own going against righties. Like, it's a really good spot for Hiura. And I think the fact that he's being put up with these guys, to me, says that Vegas thinks that, hey, Keston Hiura on this day is basically like Yelich or Trout, and you're not paying the markup because he's not a superstar. You're paying the markup because he's in a fantastic spot and crushes righties. So I think in this situation, that's why I would go Keston Hiura, even though you hear all those names. It's a crazy pick to go Hiura out of that top 5. But I do think when you get odds for a guy like Hiura against these superstars, like, you have to look at it. And I think it stands out that Hiura shouldn't be valued that high, but there's probably a reason he's valued that high.
As long as Yordan Alvarez is not in the 6 hole, if he's going to be in the 4 hole, I'm going to go Yordan Alvarez. He's the longest odds out of everybody. I know it's a left on left, but that right field in Angel Stadium has been pulled in. You're seeing a lot more home runs going out to right there. He's a pull hitter. I like going the Yordan Alvarez route, so long as if he's in the 6 hole, that's just kind of a stay away altogether. But pay attention to that lineup. He sat out the last 2 games that they played the Athletics. So I just want to let that be known that's kind of the spot that I would be looking at. However, I like the Keston Hiura call. However, Trevor Williams is also one of the highest leverage pitchers that you can get over on the top pitchers tool over at Awesemo.com. Trevor Williams getting about 10% less ownership than he should. Somebody that projected out and kind of stood out for me in Alex's projections today. And, I'll be on the Live Before Lock NBA show, but I'm going to fire a couple baseball lineups in. And I think Trevor Williams and also being on this Cubs side, it's something that I kind of like today.
All right. And moving on to biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight, and which is the worst? We've got DeGrom over 8.5, Pivetta over 4.5, May over 4.5, Desclafani over 4.5, and Williams over 4.5.
Got it.
Eric, you go first.
Yeah, I'm going to still side with the Trevor Williams. I know 4.5 seems like a low number. DeGrom,
so
8.5.
Trevor Williams, how dare you?
Dude, it's so weird. I know, but it's a Cubs situation. This Milwaukee lineup looked abysmal. I'm a Twins fan, watched all of those games this entire weekend, and they made the Twins pitching staff, which I think is about average. I think Kenta Maeda is somebody that I really like for this entire year, but man, did they make our bullpen look very, very fantastic. They should have won all three of those games. They gave up the opening day just collapse in the ninth inning. I think that might be an issue for the Twins going forward. But man, Milwaukee strikes out at a high clip. They striked out at a high clip last year. But the Minnesota pitching staff just kind of made them look very inept. And I think that overall the Chicago Cubs pitching staff is going to be better. I think Trevor Williams can be a different pitcher in Chicago. So I'm gonna try to buy in low on him early and often.
So I think for me, the bet that it's a really high number, and it's also worth pointing out that Phillies Park has been one of the worst home run parks for opposing pitchers, rather, in a long time. Right there with some of the bad ones that we talk about a lot: the Coorses, the Anaheims, the Cincinnatis of the world. So I think that's one degree of risk for DeGrom. But you're looking at a very low total here, and you're also just looking at a bunch of guys here, 4.5 strikeouts. Like, I think you can make the case for a guy like Pivetta, though his movement's not the best, but he's going against a lineup in Tampa Bay that has a lot of strikeouts. But just going to the best guy here, I think would be the move. And 8.5 strikeouts is a pretty lofty number. He's going to be going against a Philly team that does have some strikeouts in it. I think his stuff is also so good that even if he has a lineup that doesn't have strikeouts in it, you're still going to be getting the pitcher in there too. That should be an easy strikeout for him potentially. There's a lot of ways that DeGrom could get there. And I think to me, just going to him over any of these guys, I would take the talent more than anything, because it really isn't a smash spot here of a player who's like undervalued, who has a good swinging strike rate, who gets a lot of guys to chase out of the zone. That pitcher doesn't exist amidst all those other guys. And one that I would point out as the worst, Dustin May. I don't even know how much he's going to pitch. He had a terrible projection from Awesemo.
Don't play Dustin May.
Yeah, I would say that bet to me, maybe he gets to 4.5 strikeouts and 3 innings of work. I don't know, but he's only got a 3.5 fantasy point projection from Awesemo, which just means that he's probably not in for a lot of time. The Dodgers are always quick with the hook anyway, and they've always been quick with Dustin May anyway. So in this spot, to me, the bullpen's so good as well. I just think not taking Dustin May would be the move, even if you want to talk yourself into a Pivetta or Trevor Williams. Just don't play Dustin May, I think, at that bet.
And that concludes the MLB portion of the show. Moving back over to NBA, we've got, oh my gosh, we have like 3 minutes left, so we're gonna have to fly through these. No house advantage, prop or not. First up, we've got Kyrie Irving over under 8.5 assists. Spags.
I think in this spot, this is one of those lines that jumps out as being incorrectly made on No House Advantage, and that's a good thing for you. It's not something that No House Advantage is doing deliberately, but it's something with their process because they have to create a slate. They're doing it a day or two in advance and are not really hedging with their picks. They made this slate assuming that James Harden would not play today. He's not even available as a prop bet on No House Advantage, so that's another tell there. But Kyrie just doesn't assist anywhere near as much when Harden's on the floor. Maybe, again, having Aldridge out there, a guy as a stationary shooter, does make up a little more assist upside, but I think you're really trying to force a narrative there. I think this was one that Awesemo had as a 98% chance earlier in the day of not getting, of hitting the under rather. So to me in this spot, this is probably the one you make your 10-pointer today on No House Advantage.
Yep, absolutely. They saw 15 and 12 assists in 2 of Kyrie's last 3. They didn't take into account that one of them was without James Harden there. And I'm not saying Kyrie can't get on top of it, but he's going to do it at about 5% of the time. So yeah, this is a definite 10-pointer.
Kevin Porter Jr. over under 23.5 points plus assists. Eric.
Well, I know where this is going. I mean, you had to just completely tax on Kevin Porter Jr. I mean, we're going to take the under in this kind of capacity probably too. I don't know why he's not even coming up here on the projections as I'm clicking on.
Yeah, he was on the site, but not on the projections for some reason.
Okay, so that's kind of what it is. I mean, if you're going to be looking at Kevin Porter Jr., you're trying to just take some shots on him where he can spike a little bit of an upside just out of the middle of nowhere there. But this is still going to be shorting him just in terms of this would be like a low confidence or a stay away for me. But I think you could definitely short him if you were looking at doing one of the two. Taking the over, you're hoping that you're taking a flyer in like a GPP format. You don't have to do that on NHA.
Yeah, I think this is one of those spots where normally it seems like when we'd go like, oh yeah, John Wall's out, Eric Gordon's out. Like you got to play this guy because the line doesn't reflect it. The reality though for Kevin Porter is his lot doesn't change a whole lot with John Wall out, with Eric Gordon out, because you still have enough guys there with Kelly Olynyk, as we talked about earlier, Sterling Brown, Avery Bradley. These guys do just enough. DJ Augustine, they do just enough that you don't end up losing a whole lot in terms of the overall team production when Kevin Porter Jr. is taking over more of a role theoretically with John Wall out. So to me, I would have him at let's see, I have him at under 20 actually combined points and assists. And I think I could be a little bit off there, maybe a little higher, but I still think that gives me enough breathing room that I would take that as an under, but probably, as Eric was saying, closer to a 3 or 4 pointer than something you're trying to put in with that Kyrie assist prop.
All right, 1 more minute left, so we're just going to fly down this list really fast. Or actually, we have a little more time. Okay, so Jerami Grant, over under 24.5 points plus rebounds. Just kidding.
I think I'll go for this one first. For Jerami Grant, this is one that I thought he would actually have better rates without having Mason Plumlee in there. And he actually rebounds at a lower rate. Jerami Grant is a baffling player and human being. And I liked him so much. And I've mentioned him on a lot of shows. So I do want to believe in him. But Detroit just has enough guys in there that I don't know that Jerami Grant is actually going to take a meaningful uptick upwards. We've seen him spike those random upside days where he gets a lot of stocks and starts just scoring at a higher clip. But I feel like this is a line still to me that I would take the under. And I also hope that people would take the over just because they assume like, oh yeah, this is going to be a better situation for him. And in reality, the rates don't show that it is. So I think to me, that's one spot you can take an under and put it again, middle of the tier here, like a 5 or 4 pointer as well.
Well, you're bringing Hamidou Diallo in. So if you want to just talk about rebounding rates, Hamidou Diallo is a good rebounder. 15% rebound percentage on the year. He's only played 96 minutes there, but that's still a pretty large number. We saw that he was a good rebounder in Oklahoma City, had some double-double upside, didn't quite get there in a couple spots when he was higher owned. But Hamidou Diallo can rebound the basketball. Isaiah Stewart, 16.8% rebound percentage in 901 minutes this season. And Mason Plumlee just a tiny bit higher at 19.3. So by bringing Diallo onto the floor, that just creates a situation where that's the reason that you're going to see Jerami Grant's rebounds come down. So I really do like shorting those kind of numbers. That was a prop that I kind of had my eye on earlier, because I think when you bring some of these new players into situations, whether it's Corey Joseph everybody just kind of sees it as a wash. And yeah, it's a wash from a DFS perspective, but you can find some edges in the prop markets. And so I definitely have been taking some unders on some of these guys because Diallo just mixes up so much of that rebounding rate.
All right. And once again, thank you to our sponsor, No House Advantage. We're going to skip past DFS Hedge. Head over to our good dog, bad dog. Eric, give us both for tonight.
Yeah, so I alluded to him a little bit earlier. My good dog being the Rockets plus 14.5. That's a gigantic number. 8 of 9, they've been able to cover that number against about some equal competition. Phoenix is a fantastic basketball team. They could definitely go out and put the hammer down, but it's on the road. It's kind of a big number to be giving up. And Christian Wood is on the floor there with John Wall out. Christian Wood is a better basketball player. I think just all encompassing. So I like going into the 14.5 there. Bad dog being the Mavericks. I'm just going to take a stand and just think, I think Porzingis plays, but even if he doesn't, I'm not scared away of the 4.5 number that you can get around the books.
A good dog for me would be Minnesota. I think a 4-point spread for them at home is surprising that they would be an underdog going against Sacramento. I know people like Sacramento. Sacramento certainly shown some upside, but I think Minnesota just being undervalued, underappreciated, and even with their guys who are going to be out, Towns is really the main event there. That's the one that matters, and I think he's going to have a nice day. So that's my good dog. Bad dog for me, I'm unfortunately going to have to go against Eric here. I just don't see how Houston hangs in this one. I have not been impressed by Kevin Porter Jr. when he's been in this role, that he's just got to defer to other guys. And I think this spread being huge to me screams that Phoenix is actually going to run away with this one in a meaningful way. So I think even with the 14-point road spread, Phoenix is like a serious team and Houston's a bunch of guys kind of figuring out what they're doing. So I would take Phoenix on the points here.
In Spags, your make or break is?
Make or break, probably going to be the McLaughlin and Isaiah Stewart duo again. And we talked about it earlier. These are the guys who are the clear-cut value, barring something else happening. Honestly, even if Malachi Flynn opens up with Fred VanVleet out, I think that's something that still I would just have more of those three guys. I think that's very clear-cut value and also good value today, whether they're chalk or not.
I love that. I won't copy on that. I'll go Toronto Raptors. I think they're just in the best spot. They see the pace up of they get the Washington Wizards bump. And so anytime you get that situation, this is like the best position that they could possibly be walking into. And they're going to be walking into it shorthanded. So I'm very excited about them.
Eric, your fate of the day.
Fate of the day, probably. I don't know if there's anything that I'm like completely vehemently against at the moment, based on ownership. If I had to go to like anything, I would probably say Phoenix. I don't really have any interest in Phoenix Suns. I know Booker's shown an upside, and maybe a team that's favored this much, I should have more interest. Houston's obviously not very good, but I think they're all priced about appropriately, and I just don't even want to have to deal with that late swap situation. Like normally, I'm just always preaching late swap, but I think this might be a set it and forget it kind of lineup situation today.
And I'm fading OG Anunoby. Go to hell, OG Anunoby. I'll make it short and sweet so Tyler can get to his next show.
Perfect. And on that note, that's going to do it for us today on the tip-off. Thanks to Eric and Spags. We'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm Kayla Knierim. Have a good one.